The following podcast contains mature subject matter, adult themes, and may also contain profanity. You have been warned.
Hello there, Absurdians. Happy Wednesday to you all. Welcome back to the show. This is a Rod solo show. Mel is not here. I will explain in our second story, my second story, as to her whereabouts. It's conceivably lurid. I've sent our own private detective out to find out for sure what's going on, although I have a pretty good idea. So do stand by for that. Hopefully you'll stand by for the whole show. Why would you not? No real business to attend to other than we have 24 new listeners just in the past week. I thought of thanking them all individually, and I will probably do so next week, but I did not have time to get down all their names. But a huge welcome to all of them. Thank you so much. As it's just me, we're obviously not going to discuss my weekend. Doesn't matter, because I didn't do anything anyway. I've been chilling out, being a homebody, which I thoroughly enjoy, and I've been catching up on some horror movies, and I have been rewatching Murdoch Mysteries. Now, I don't really care if you don't like it. That's up to you. Entirely subjective. I do like the show. It's a bit of everything. It's obviously some crime drama, if you will, some humor, even some science fiction, and some alternate history. And there's my stinking phone beeping because I forgot to turn it off. God, thank God Mel isn't here, because I would get a tongue wagging. No, not that kind. Don't be silly. So, yeah, I'm just going to turn this off and we shan't be interrupted again. Yeah, that's been me. That's been me the past week, just hanging out, eating lots of corn on the cob because 'tis the season. And I do love me some good corn on the cob. You better believe it. So we're gonna I keep saying we're, it's only me. But Mel is here in spirit, if not in body. We're gonna jump in right away today. And we're gonna go back a couple of years. 4 to be precise. And I'm sure most of you remember the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Horrible incident. I'm not going to go too much in depth on regaling all the horrific incident of that day, but we're going to look at a different aspect of this. So here we go. A mother who bravely entered Uvalde, Texas Robb Elementary School to save her children says she was harassed by local police officers afterwards. Angeli Rose Gomez told San Antonio News 4 that she took matters into her own hands during the May 2022 school shooting massacre that left 19 children and 2 adults dead. Gomez said she rushed to the school when she heard an active shooter was on the property. She could hear gunshots and children screaming as she came face to face with officers standing outside the school doors. The officers told her she could not enter the school and momentarily put her in handcuffs as she tried to enter the school. After convincing them that she would calm down, they released her from the cuffs, she said. That's when she saw an opportunity. She told the news outlet she jumped a nearby fence and began banging on a door window, motioning to her eldest son's teacher, who she could see inside the school. Gomez told her, quote, "You already have a gateway out, so you might as well just come out. Like if I'm going to run out with him, y'all just come on too." It's not the most coherent sentence in the world, but I think I get the meaning. I'm sure you do too. Once inside the building, she was able to collect her oldest son and some of his classmates, ushering them out of the school. She then went back to the door of her youngest son's classroom. Quote, "At this moment, I'm jiggling the handle and I'm going pretty nuts, like trying to get the door open and it's not going to open. So I stand back and the cops are already on me and they're like, 'Ma'am, calm down,'" she recounted. She says she told police she wouldn't leave the hallway until they began evacuating the classroom. Immediately, they start evacuating that classroom, and my son runs out to me, and he's like, "Mom, Mom." Since the harrowing incident, her lawyer says Gomez has been the target of harassment and hostility by some of the officers on the Uvalde force. As far as we know, there's 2 definite instances, Mark DiCarlo told HuffPost, saying his client was recently pulled over at a traffic stop and falsely accused of having illegal immigrants in her car. DiCarlo says police also parked outside her home for 45 minutes and flashed their car lights at her and her mother when they went for a walk. Uvalde's officers have been the subject of much, and if I may say, deserved, criticism for how they conducted themselves on the day of the shooting. Texas's public safety chief, Steve McCraw, said officers waited more than 70 minutes before storming the school and killing the shooter, something he described as an, quote, "abject failure." Quote, 3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize the subject, McCraw said during a Texas Senate committee hearing last week. Last week being about 3 years ago, painting much of the blame at School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo. Quote, "The officers had weapons, the children had none. The officers had body armor, the children had none. The officers had training, the subject had none," McCraw said. 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds. That is how long the children waited and the teachers waited in room 111 to be rescued. The May 24th attack at Robb Elementary School is the deadliest school shooting in the U.S. in nearly a decade. And for 3 days, police offered a confusing and sometimes contradictory timeline that drew public anger and frustration. Authorities now acknowledge that students and teachers repeatedly begged 911 operators for help, while the police chief told more than a dozen officers to wait in a hallway. Officials said he believed that the suspect was barricaded inside adjoining classrooms and that there was no longer an active attack. The chief's decision, and the officer's apparent willingness to follow his directions against established active shooter protocols, prompted questions about whether more lives were lost because officers did not act faster to stop the gunman, and who should be held responsible. DiCarlo told HuffPost he wrote to the Uvalde Police Department about what happened, but has not received a response. The police have not publicly commented about Gomez's allegations. An emotional Gomez told CBS News she thinks the officers' delayed response cost innocent children their lives. "They could have saved way more lives," Gomez said in an interview earlier this month. "They could have gone into the classroom, and maybe 2 or 3 would have been gone. But they could have saved the whole class. They could have done something, gone through the window, sniped him through the window, something, but nothing was being done." Last week, the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District Superintendent Hal Harrell confirmed that Arredondo has been put on administrative leave, citing still unanswered questions about what happened that day. From the beginning of this horrible event, I shared that the district would wait until the investigation was complete before making personal decisions, Harrell said. Because of the lack of clarity that remains and the unknown timing of when I will receive the results of the investigation, I have made the decision to place Chief Arredondo on administrative leave effective on this date. Now, I have on occasion been critical of police, not the police, not the need for police. Obviously, we need police. Police are not crime prevention, though. They're law enforcement, and they hope, well, maybe they're a little bit of crime prevention, but, you know, it surely does seem that, as the saying goes, there's never a cop around when you need one. And I've had this discussion with a somewhat friend of mine who is a former police officer. And he is the sort of, I don't doubt he was a good cop. And of course there's lots of good cops. Of course there is. But like any profession, there's bad cops. My difficulty with the police is that even the good cops will go to bat for the bad cops. This line of blue bullshit. It's garbage. As a former teacher, there's bad teachers. We all had bad teachers. And as someone who I consider myself to be a good teacher, I want the bad teachers out. I don't want them teaching. They have no business being there. But even the good cops will never, ever say that about a bad cop. Maybe to other cops, but not to the public. They simply won't. They will back them to the hilt. And I've never understood that, because doing so diminishes you as a good cop. You're doing your profession, and indeed yourself, a great disservice. Why would you want bad cops? Why would you want them? And these cops in this story were absolute chicken shits. I don't expect them to run in guns blazing. Of course not. First off, collateral damage. Secondly, I don't want cops getting shot. But you're the trained professionals. If people can't rely on you, you're garbage. You're useless. You're nothing. Quit the force. Go become a fucking bylaw officer. No, even bylaw officers have more balls than any of these guys. And then to harass the woman. That is... And you know what? If I presented this to the aforementioned quasi-friend, he would back the Uvalde cops. I would bet my life on it. Well, maybe not my life. Maybe someone else's life, someone I don't like. But that disgusts me. If we can't rely on them, and in fact, in the U.S., they're not even required to protect you. It is not in the American police force's mandate to have to protect you. So what good are you? What good are you? Anyways, I find shit like this super annoying because, and I'll reiterate it again, of course there's good cops. The majority are good cops. But if you are a good cop, and I know one good cop who listens to this show, I'm not going to say who he is, hopefully he knows who he is. And I don't know what his train of thought is on the points I just made. But I would hope to God that if he discovers a bad cop, that you do something about it. Why would you want them around you, representing your chosen profession? I cannot understand that. I am incapable of understanding that. So, sorry about the soapbox, but this is the kind of shit that really bugs me. I think like any person, I have a healthy problem with authority. We all should. We shouldn't accept authority unilaterally and absolutely and unquestionably. No. Authority deserves and needs to be questioned at some point, especially in a situation like this cowardly cop force. They should all be fired. They should not ever be police officers again. I don't care about them one damn bit. Okay, now I'm getting off the soapbox. All right, let's get on to something a little meatier. And this is a story that I alluded to earlier that will explain the whereabouts of Mel. She was actually sent to investigate the story last week. As you'll recall, we did not put out an episode last week. I was consulting Kim Jong-un, the leader of the hermit country North Korea. He wanted some dietary input. He rejected it all. Of course he did. And I was also schooling him on ways to quit smoking. He is a beyond heavy smoker. Well, I barely made it out with my life after my suggestions were not well received. So piss on him. Smoke yourself to death. But Mel went to investigate a story, and as I said, she's not back yet. I think you'll get an idea as to why once you hear this very short but interesting story. On the first Monday of every month, Class Soiree Steakhouse, located in Hollywood, Florida, holds an evening where diners are allowed to partake in a yummy meal without wearing any clothing. Chef and owner Murad Ali came up with the concept as a way to attract new business and generate some buzz. All said there is a market for this kind of experience, and that the staff are well trained and respectful of their customers. Quote, "I'm the chef and owner. My crew, we are all professionals," said Ali. He said the restaurant is expecting around 20 people for the latest naked dining experiences. Tickets are $250 for men, $150 for women, or $300 for couple. Nice equality. Ali said it's a 5-star experience dripping with class and elegance. There's an unfortunate term to use. Once you walk through the door, I'll most likely be nude, no clothes on. So when you come in, you do feel more comfortable. I'm not sure about that, said hostess Tashiba Hart. As for the legality of the concept, Local 10 News went to city officials. Yes, it's legal, said Joanne Hussey, a spokesperson for the city of Hollywood. It's legal because the staff members working are clothed. Well, wait a second. The hostess is naked. Yeah, so, you fill in the blanks there as to the whereabouts of Mel, having been sent to explore this story. She was certainly not funded by the show at $150 a seat. Better bloody not be. But would you attend a restaurant where you and your fellow guests and all the other patrons are naked? Hopefully this isn't TMI. I got no problem with being naked. And, I'm not walking down the hallways naked or, going for a stroll over to Sobeys with nothing on. But, it's a body. That's all it is. Nudity does not immediately equate anything sexual. We kind of have done that in our rather sometimes Quakerish society, but, we're all born naked. That's what I'm saying. But I don't know if I could do that. That would be really, really weird, I got to admit. And I'd sure as shit hope I would never spill the gravy. Yeah, so feel free to post on our socials, Instagram, Facebook. We're now on Threads too. It's a good time. Feel free to or comment to us directly. Send us a Facebook message or Instagram message and say, would you partake in such a, I don't know, revealing dinner? Sounds kind of weird to me, but c'est la vie, man. As my musical, I don't want to use the word hero, but my favorite musician of all time, Frank Zappa, once said, without deviation from the norm, there can be no change. And he right. So hopefully Mel is back and no worse for wear next week. Right, so let's get on to the final story of the day. I'm only doing 3, so deal with it. I love a good science story. I don't pretend to have a big head for science, I didn't take physics in high school. I took chemistry until our teacher almost killed us by accidentally dropping a rock of sodium into water while we were all gathered around. I took that as an omen that, this is a good class to drop. But I do love science, and I love stories about science, particularly when they impact society, which a lot of them do. This is one, though, I hope you're going to like. It's freaky, so let's dig it. In a quiet building in the Arizona desert, more than 200 dead people are patiently waiting to be brought back to life. They aren't buried. They obviously aren't cremated. Instead, their bodies, and in some cases, only their heads, are stored upside down inside giant steel containers filled with liquid nitrogen, preserved at temperatures below minus 184 degrees Celsius, or minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit if you like. The hope that decades or even centuries from now, scientists may become advanced enough to resurrect them. Welcome to the strange, fascinating, and deeply controversial world of cryonics. The facility belongs to the Alcor Life Extension Foundation, a Scottsdale-based nonprofit that advocates for and performs cryonic preservation. As of late 2023, Alcor had nearly 2,000 members and was preserving the remains of more than 220 people. More than 100 of those individuals chose, quote, neuropreservation, meaning only their heads were preserved. The organization also stores dozens of pets. The process begins only after a person has been declared legally dead. Well, I would bloody hope so. Once death is pronounced, Alcor's team works quickly to cool the body and circulate protective chemicals designed to minimize ice crystal formation. The patient is then transported to Arizona, where the body is gradually cooled to cryogenic temperatures and placed in long-term storage inside liquid nitrogen-filled vessels known as dewars. Many members fund the procedure through life insurance policies that name Alcor as the beneficiary. Whole body preservation can cost around $200,000, while preserving only the brain costs significantly less. Alcor is remarkably candid about its mission. The organization openly acknowledges that it cannot revive anyone today. Instead, cryonics is built on a giant what if. What if future medicine can repair damaged organs? What if scientists one day cure diseases that are currently fatal? What if advanced biotechnology or nanotechnology can reverse the cellular damage caused by death and cryopreservation? To supporters, cryonics is not a guarantee, it's a long-shot bet. As many advocates put it, if you're buried or cremated, your chances of coming back are zero. Cryonics, they argue, at least leaves the door cracked open. Here's the catch. No human being has ever been revived after undergoing cryonic preservation. Not one. In fact, modern science cannot even revive a mammal after being cryonically preserved at the temperatures used by organizations like Alcor. The scientific community remains highly skeptical of cryonics, with many researchers characterizing the practice as pseudoscience. For those of you not aware, pseudoscience means not established science, quirky, perhaps maybe even probably baseless in any sort of scientific theory. One of the biggest hurdles is damage caused by the freezing process itself. Although modern techniques known as vitrification aim to reduce ice crystal formation, experts say significant cellular and structural damage still occurs. Then there are even bigger questions. Can memories and personality survive the process? Can a brain that has been legally dead for decades ever be restored? Will future civilizations even have an interest in reviving people from the 20th and 21st century? At the moment, nobody knows. Despite the uncertainty, cryonics has attracted a surprising number of believers. Hall of Fame baseball player Ted Williams is perhaps Alcor's most famous patient. Futurist FM 2030 is also among those preserved at the facility. Over the years, several high-priced figures have publicly expressed interest in cryonics, including entrepreneur Peter Thiel, go ahead, and hotel heiress Paris Hilton. It should be noted that despite the long-held belief, Walt Disney was not cryogenically frozen. The claim that his body or head is preserved in a cold cylinder is a false urban legend. Walt Disney died of lung cancer on December 15, 1966, and official death records and family members confirm he was cremated 2 days later. The idea of cryogenics has also appeared repeatedly in movies and television, helping turn cryonics into one of science's most enduring, maybe someday, concepts. For supporters, cryonics is not about cheating death, it's about redefining it. They argue that what medicine calls death today has changed throughout history. A stopped heart once meant death was final. Today, doctors routinely revive people after cardiac arrest. Certain diseases that were once death sentences are now treatable. Cryonics supporters believe future generations may eventually view today's definitions of death the same way we now view outdated medical practices from centuries past. Critics, however, counter that cryonics sells hope based on technologies that may never exist. Inside Alcor's Arizona facility, there are no blinking machines, no suspended animation chambers, and no signs of life. Just rows of large metal containers quietly holding people who have already died. Whether those patients are participating in the most ambitious medical experiment in history or simply taking a part in an elaborate act of faith remains impossible to know. For now, cryonics exists in a strange place between science and science fiction, medicine and philosophy. And inside one building in Scottsdale, hundreds of people are betting that the future will eventually figure out the answer. So let's supposing that the science does become possible to revive these people in 100 years. Even 100 years, let's say. And let's imagine, for the sake of argument, that their personality, their memories, the stuff that makes them them survives, and they retain it. What's the world going to be like in 100 years? I have asked Mel on this show before, and other friends, and myself, If I had a time machine, would I rather go backwards in time or forwards? Well, I'd much rather go forwards. Even though I'm a student of history, lifelong student of history, you wouldn't have to go back very far before things would get pretty shitty. You know? Just demonstrating what you know could get you burned as a witch if you went back far enough. You wouldn't have to go back terribly far before a simple infected cut would kill you. But if you go to the future, what's the world going to be like in 100 years? Look at what it was like 100 years ago, 1926. Flying planes had only been around for about 20 years. In the span of a lifetime, we went from motorized flight to landing on the moon. That is I don't want to be, no pun intended, but that's an astronomical difference in technology. So where we are now, a lot of people like to think, oh yeah, people who did this stuff in the past, boy, were they dumb. Well, everybody's going to look at us with the same condemning light in 20 years, in 50 years, never mind 100 years. If you went into the future 100 years, you better hope that they don't have freak shows or human zoos, because you might end up in one as an absolute relic, a living fossil. And would your brain be able to comprehend and cope with the way the world was at such a future date? I don't think so. You would be overwhelmed. And that's putting it extremely mildly. It would be terrifying. Imagine bringing a person from 1926 to today. You know, yeah, they had cars back then. Most people didn't. And they were rickety, borderline death traps where the brakes didn't always work. Imagine them seeing cars now. Imagine them seeing, Airbus 320s flying overhead. Never mind riding in one. Imagine television, color television, cell phones. The mind would reel. It would almost collapse in on itself. You'd need to go to a nice, quiet little cell. And that's probably where you'd find yourself. So, and that's only 100 years. What if the science doesn't come around for 500 years? No, man. I'm not afraid of death. I am quite possibly afraid of how I'll die. And I don't wish to die because I want to see what's going on. I want to watch the end of the story. But death itself does not frighten me. Either there's something or there's nothing, and my beliefs change neither. So consider it the greatest mystery. I think it must be a great deal of fear for these people to undergo this procedure. What a vain and rather sad hope. I don't see it happening. As the article pointed out, what would be the point? Well, actually, as I think about this, the article did say what would be the point in future society in bringing these people back. But I just thought of one. If you were an anthropologist or a historian, there would be great treasure in being able to talk with someone from an bygone era. So that's one thing, but I don't think these people in the coolers, I don't think they're going to enjoy it. I think it would be, if successful, and that's a gigantic if, I think it would be terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Alrighty. That brings me to the end of the show, and you, of course. Quick reminder, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. And when you're listening to our show, on whatever platform you listen to, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, whatever it may be, whatever is your preference, please give us a rating, 5-star preferably. And if you have a couple of minutes, you'd like to help us out, give us a review. preferably a good one. And if you have any story suggestions, we get them sent quite frequently. By all means, send them to us. We are absolutely open to input. And if you want a little shout out for it, happy to do that. Happy to oblige. So until next week, and hopefully the safe return of Mel, do take care of yourselves and one another. Goodbye, Absurdians.
The Absurd Podcast is written, produced, and recorded by Rod and Mel. Music by Audionautics.com.